Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be going over the early slate and the main slate for Wednesday, May 23rd. You guys have been requesting me to do this covering both slates when we have split slates. We got 5 early games today and 10 games on the main slate, so we're going to talk about both slates. We're going to start with the early slate. Look through the pitching options. I already have my 5 plays in, but I will talk about these guys, why I chose them. Don't just plug in the 5 plays. Definitely listen to some of the analysis, some of the reason I chose these guys, because always I don't get all my picks right, definitely, so you make sure you want to listen to what I say. Maybe you don't agree with what I say and you want to go different ways. There's totally no problem with that. Always listen to what I have to say, guys, before you just put the picks in. But yeah, before we do get started looking at pitcher for this early slate and talk about some bats, make sure you guys drop a like on the video. It always helps, and if you have not subscribed yet, be sure you do subscribe. Really appreciate that as well. But yeah, pitcher today, as you can see, my 2 pitchers on the early slate that I like are Justin Verlander and Kyle Gibson. Now, Justin Verlander is a pretty clear option here, in my opinion. At home versus the Giants, Verlander is really the only stud on the early slate. The next most expensive pitcher on DK is Michael Wacha. So Verlander is a guy I'm kind of locking in here. If we look at just Vegas information, this Giants team not getting a lot of respect from Vegas here. They only have a 2.9 implied run total for today. Pretty likely Verlander pitches deep into this game, gets a win, can rack up some strikeouts as well. This Giants team does have a lot of strikeouts in their lineup. With it being a day game, there's possibly a chance they rest somebody like McCutchen or Posey, Belt. Maybe one of them get a day off since it's a day game. But yeah, Verlander, just love him here. Clear stud option on the early slate. Really don't think you should fade him. He's just got so much upside. The dude's been so good this year. I really don't see any pitcher that could possibly even get close to Verlander. Verlander will most likely be the highest scoring pitcher on the slate. So locking him in, pretty clear there. But then SP2, this is where I think you can go different ways. I think Zach Galli could be a play versus the Brewers if you wanted to go to him at 8K. But I do really like Kyle Gibson here versus the Tigers. I think this is a good spot for Kyle Gibson. This Tigers team is a right-handed heavy team. If we look at their projected lineup for tomorrow, look at how many righties are in that lineup, or at least lefties. It looks like they're only going to have 3 lefties in their lineup, so 6 righties. Kyle Gibson, pretty good versus righties. Can definitely get some strikeouts. The guy's actually a pretty good pitcher. He was a pitcher I kind of picked on a lot a couple years ago, but Gibson's really turned things around. He's been much better this year, and I think this is a good spot for him pitching at home versus a team that's not good offensively, that has strikeouts in their lineup. They're not getting respect from Vegas either. The Tigers only have a 3.7 implied run total for today. I really like Kyle Gibson here. I think he is a good SP2 option. You can pair with Verlander. You are going to have to find some value if you do that, because going Verlander-Gibson, I think it leaves you about 3,700 remaining per player. But there are some cheap bats that I do like on this slate. Really looking at cheap SP2s, there's not a lot I love besides Gibson. Like, I'm not going to Junis most likely. Even though Eric Fede gets a matchup with the Padres, I'm not going to that guy. I just don't think he's that good of a pitcher. And at 6,300, he's kind of priced similarly to Gibson. I feel like Gibson's a much safer option. Michael Fulmer was a pitcher I was on a lot last year, but hasn't really been the same this year. And I'm not in love with this matchup with the Twins. Justin Marja has not been good this year, and that's a bad matchup with the Astros. And then Brent Suter, I'm not really sure how deep he's going to pitch. Not really a starter. I believe he's making a spot start, and he might only pitch 2 or 3 innings here. That's kind of one of the reasons he's 4K. So SP2 for me, it's really Gibson and Godley. Those are kind of the 2 guys I'm looking at, and obviously Verlander is pretty much a must-play in my opinion on this slate. But now looking for hitters, I think there are some teams we can look to for cheap bats. The Diamondbacks are one of them. I do like the Diamondbacks here versus Brent Suter. Suter is definitely a guy that will give up some home runs to righties. The Diamondbacks do have some righties with power in their lineup, specifically towards the top of that lineup with Nick Ahmed, Chris Owings, and Paul Goldschmidt. I like all 3 of those guys, especially Ahmed and Owings, because they are so cheap. Ahmed's just 2.9K, project about second, and Owings is 3,100, obviously. Project about third versus a lefty. Owings has been good versus lefties this year. Good hitters park in Milwaukee. Just think the Diamondbacks are a good team you can look to today for some value, especially if you want to play Verlander. You're going to need cheap bats. I think that's where this team does come in. Suter is not really a guy I think's a gas can, but definitely a guy I don't mind taking a couple bats against. And that is why I'm going to look to the Diamondbacks today. And then at third base, probably one of the clear value plays on this slate, in my opinion, is Matt Carpenter, 3,700. You can play him at third base. I would recommend playing Owings at second and put Carpenter in at third. You can play Owings in the outfield, but I think playing him at second makes a lot more sense. But looking at Carpenter, you look at the DraftKings game log, this dude has really started to heat up. We saw to begin the year, Matt Carpenter was ice cold, but in his last 4 games, 10, 13, 15, 24 DraftKings points. He's got 2, 1, 3, and 3 hits last 4 games. Just been hitting the ball really well. We're starting to see Matt Carpenter really get things going. And I do like this matchup with Jake Junis. I do like the Cardinals here as a team we can look to stack up. They do have the highest implied run total on the early slate. They've got some value in their lineup as well. Besides Martinez and Pham, everybody in this lineup is under 4K. The Cardinals are a team you're really going to look to for value, I feel like. Ozuna's only 3,200. You got Dexter Fowler, who did lead off the other day, or on Tuesday, I believe he led off versus Hamill. He leads off again, could be some value at 3,400, but right now he is projected about 6th. But yeah, you're going to want to look to the Cardinals today, I feel like, versus Junis because they're really cheap. They have a high implied run total, and Junis is a pitcher don't mind really picking on. And especially with a guy like Matt Carpenter that's always been good versus righties that's dirt cheap on DraftKings. Makes a lot of sense as value. And then my final play on the early slate is Josh Reddick. I really like Josh Reddick here versus Samardzija. Samardzija has not been good this year. The guy has really struggled. He was a pitcher I was on a lot last year because he pitched really well last year, but that hasn't been the case this year. He's in a tough spot here versus the Astros, a team that just will put the ball in play, doesn't strike out a ton, has a ton of dangerous bats in their lineup. Reddick is a guy that I see from that lineup that is really cheap, has always been good versus righties. 3,600 projected about 5th for a team that I feel like is going to put up some runs today. I think Josh Reddick makes sense as a cheap value option. If you're looking to go that cheap in the outfield, you need some value. I do like Reddick, 3,600 versus Samardzija. But yeah, guys, these are my 5 plays for the early slate. Justin Verlander, Kyle Gibson, Chris Owings, Matt Carpenter, and Josh Reddick. Now moving on to stacks for the early slate. Pretty much number 1 and 2 for me is the Cardinals and Astros. Those are teams I'm really looking to, and then I do like picking some one-offs from the Diamondbacks. Maybe if you want to play like Ahmed, Owings, and Goldschmidt, a 2-3-4 stack. That is really cheap, especially with Ahmed and Owings. You could do that, but full team stacks, I think the Cardinals and the Astros are 2 teams you're going to look to today. And then BVP plays on the early slate. I believe we only have one with at least a 10 at-bat sample. And that is Anthony Rendon. He is 4 for 11 with the home run versus Tyson Ross. But yeah, I think that's it for the early slate. If we look at pitchers, there are a couple pitchers that have done well. Both of them are in my 5 plays. Kyle Gibson, done well against the Tigers. The Tigers have only hit him for a 223 average through 121 at-bats. And then Justin Verlander, done well against the Giants. The Giants have only hit him for a 187 average through 64 at-bats. But yeah, moving on to the main slate. Looking at the main slate for tonight, pitching definitely interesting. We only have 2 pitchers over 10K on this slate, Jacob deGrom and Kyle Freeland. And then there are a lot of mid-tier options. I was feeling like for a 10-game slate, we would have some more studs to choose from, but just over 10K, we only got 2 options. Then you got Maeda, Skaggs, John Lester, Sabathia, Chad Kuhl, and it just kind of keeps going down. Just talking about the studs, Jacob deGrom for me on this slate is a clear top option. He's very expensive at $13,200, but I do like this matchup with the Marlins. deGrom's going to be pitching at home here where he pitches really well. This is a Marlins team that doesn't have a ton of strikeouts in their lineup, but just is not a good offensive team. If we look at their projected lineup and their implied run total for tomorrow, right now the Marlins only have a 2.9 implied run total, and you look at this projected lineup, just a lot of really bad hitters that are just not good. And I think deGrom's just such a clear option here. Like I said, pitching at home, the guy's pitched really well at home throughout his career. He's expensive on this slate, but I think there are some cheap bats you can look to make it pretty easy to fit him in. I will pair him with David Price. I did do that in my 5 plays. That does really cut you thin on salary. If you want to look for a cheaper SB2, I will talk about some of the other options, but I do like going with deGrom and Price. I just feel like this is a great matchup for David Price, and he is somewhat cheap. I feel like he's kind of a little bit too cheap, and just to be honest, given the matchup and the ballpark as well. Good matchup versus a Rays team that does have strikeouts in their lineup. Will strike out versus lefties. Price is only 8,800. Good pitcher's park here. I believe he's had some really good games in the past against the Rays. If we can get the game log to pull up. He's faced them 3 times this year is what it looks like. Faced them at home April 28th, 5.6 DK points. Then faced them twice to begin the year in Tampa Bay, 27 DK points, and then back at home, 22 DK points. Looks like he got 5 strikeouts, and then 5 strikeouts. So he's gotten 5 strikeouts every time he's faced the Rays team. I think he could definitely rack up a few more Ks than that. 6, 7, 8 strikeouts is a possibility for David Price here. An 8,800, I do like that price tag. Pairing him with DeGrom is going to cut you thin on salary. But like I said, there are cheap bats that I like that we will talk about in a second. But just looking at the other pitchers, if you want to go cheaper than David Price, just to be clear, if I'm paying up for pitcher today, I'm not going to Kyle Freeland. I just don't think he's a $10,000 pitcher. If I'm going up top, I'm either paying up for DeGrom or I'm just going to play like two mid-range options. I would definitely recommend paying for DeGrom in cash games. If you want to fade him in tournaments and maybe play two 8K, 9K guys, I guess you could do that. But DeGrom, clear play here. But yeah, moving on to the SB2s, looking for other SB2 options that maybe we could pair with DeGrom that are a little bit cheaper. There really isn't a lot I love on this slate. Chris Archer is cheap. He's at home, but versus the Red Sox, I don't know if I can go there on the slate. Archer, just so risky. You never know what you're going to get with the guy. He did look good last start against the Angels, but this is a tough matchup. The Red Sox have been hitting the ball so well this year. I just don't know if I want to go to Archer, especially not in cash, maybe in tournaments, just because of the price tag. You could go there. I think maybe a guy like Marco Gonzalez could be an option just because he's getting the athletics in Oakland Stadium, which is a very good pitcher's park. And Marco Gonzalez is only 6,100. It does make sense to pair him with DeGrom. That still won't give you a ton of salary, but definitely frees you up a little bit more if you take out David Price and maybe play Marco Gonzalez. So I could see going to Marco Gonzalez at 6,100 if you're looking for a cheap SB2, but other than that, there really isn't a lot I love on this slate. Like, Arrieta's cheap, but against the Braves, I can't go there. Chad Kuhl has to face the Reds in Cincinnati, and that's kind of a scary spot for me. CC Sabathia, never really a guy roster, especially not when he's going to be pitching in Texas in that heat, in that hitter's park. Like Maeda, not really a guy I ever play, and he's expensive. Tyler Skaggs is kind of priced up as well, so I think I'm just going to be jamming into DeGrom and Price today and then kind of figuring out from there. We do have cheap bats in this Baltimore White Sox game. This is a game I really want to look to for hitters. A lot of value in this game, and it does have a high total. Both teams, I think, are going to be able to put up runs here. Both of these pitchers are not very good. Dylan Covey, I don't feel like is a very good pitcher, and neither is Alex Cobb. So you can look to the Orioles and the White Sox for some value bats. That's kind of what I did with my 5 plays. Starting off with Chris Davis, he's only 3,100 in a matchup with Dylan Covey. Dylan Covey was a guy I picked on a ton last year when he started. He just seemed like he got blown up every start, and I don't really think he's fixed things, so I'm going to look to the Orioles today. They have a high run total at 5.1 runs, and they got a lot of value in their lineup. Besides Manny Machado, everyone is either 4K or under on this team. Just so much value from this Orioles lineup. They have power. They have guys that can hit righties well, can hit righties for power. Although Chris Davis is definitely a risky play, has the potential to put up a 0 for you, the guy still has some power. 4 home runs this year. Could definitely take Covey deep. So I like Chris Davis at first base. You're looking for a cheap play. Then on the other side, I like Yolmer Sanchez from the White Sox. He is only 3,300. Good value play here, projected at second. Alex Cobb is a pitcher I'm really not afraid to pick on. Not a pitcher I think, or it's a pitcher that I don't think is very good. So love the White Sox here. Starting from top to bottom, looking at this lineup, they've got cheap bats as well. The most expensive bats are Jose Abreu and Moncada. They're both over 4K. And then besides them, everyone is under 4,000. Sanchez, 3,300. Daniel Palka, 3,600. Matt Davidson, only 3,600. A lot of value from this White Sox team versus a pitcher that has really struggled this year. I think they do make sense as a team you can look to for value. So I like Yolmer Sanchez here at 3,300. And then lastly, going back to the Orioles, Adam Jones was a guy who was on Tuesday night. Like him again here versus Dylan Covey. Like I said, Covey just not a good pitcher. He'll give up power. Give up home runs. Adam Jones does have power versus righties. Just has power in general. Already has 8 home runs this year. Could definitely take Covey deep as well. Love the Orioles on this slate. Just think they make a lot of sense as a team to look to for value hitters. So these are my 5 plays for the main slate. Jacob deGrom, David Price, Chris Davis, Yolmer Sanchez, and Adam Jones. Now looking at stacks, really focusing on this game on the main slate, the Orioles and White Sox. Especially if I'm paying up for Jacob deGrom, I'm going to need value hitters. This is really where that team comes in, or both of these teams come in. And then other teams that we could go to, I think both sides of this Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game could be interesting, especially the Pittsburgh side. But these Pittsburgh bats did kind of get priced up. Great matchup with Homer Bailey, but it's going to be hard to play these guys with DeGrom, and especially with DeGrom and Price, because all of them are over 4K, pretty much besides Josh Harrison. Polanco's 4,400. Josh Bell is only 4K, which I do like at first base if you can find a way to fit him in. Dickerson's 4K. you can maybe fit him in. Even Colin Moran at third base, 3,700. Like I said, going to be hard to play these guys with DeGrom and Price, but you could look to both sides of this game, especially some of the lefties from the Reds. Chad Kuhl, always been a guy that struggled versus lefties. There are some cheap lefties in this Reds lineup. But that's really it for stacks, for teams I'm loading up on. I do love the Yankees here versus Doug Fister, but it's just going to be so hard to play these guys if you want to play DeGrom, because all these bats are expensive. Really, the cheap ones are like Didi Gregorius, I guess, 4,600. Hicks is 4,300. Maybe the bottom of that lineup you could look to. Neil Walker's only 3,700. Project about second, but again, it's going to be hard to play these guys with DeGrom on this slate. But I do like the Yankees. If you're fading DeGrom, you're going for like two mid-range pitchers. Definitely load up on the Yankees bats of 5.9 implied run total for them. But yeah, guys, I think that's it for stacks on the main slate. Now looking at BVP plays for the main slate, just going over the ones that have a pretty high sample. You can pause the video if you want to look at some of the other plays, but looking at with at least about a 15-20 at-bat sample. Sensu Chu is 6 for 21 versus CC Sabathia. Mookie Betts, 12 for 34 with 4 home runs versus Chris Archer. David Freese, 9 for 29 with 2 home runs versus Homer Bailey. Rajai Davis could be a value play today, especially versus Lester, who really struggles to hold on runners. If Rajai Davis is in the lineup for the Indians, you could look to him for value. They have been leading him off versus lefties. If Davis does lead off today, could be a great value play. Not sure what his price tag is, or if he's in the projected lineup. He's projected about 8th, only 3K, but like I said, versus lefties, they have been leading Davis off at some points, and could be a value option. He's hit John Lester well, 14 for 49 with a home run. And obviously, if Rajai Davis gets on base, the guy will steal bases. Gives you more upside that way. Also, Edwin Encarnacion has hit Lester well, 10 for 44 with 3 home runs. But moving on to pitchers that have done well, 2 pitchers on the main slate have done well in their matchups. David Price done well against the Rays. The Rays are only hitting him for a 177 average through 113 at-bats. And then Kenta Maeda done well against the Rockies. The Rockies are only hitting him for a 243 average through 70 at-bats. But yeah, guys, that's it for BVP and PVB on the main slate, and I think that's really it for this video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. Hopefully it did help you. If you did enjoy, like always, just make sure you click that like button before you get out of here. And if you have not subscribed yet, make sure you do subscribe as well. And like always, if you have questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at the DFS_GOAT, or leave a comment down below. And I will get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And good luck tonight on both slates, guys. Peace.